So one Nintendo console generation that has aged incredibly well is none other than the GameCube era of gaming, as Nintendo truly put out many timeless classics that have some of the highest user review scores of all time period. And in today's video, I want to highlight a list of some of those games, break down all of the leaks and rumors that suggest that we may be seeing multiple GameCube remaster projects headed to the Nintendo Switch soon, and discuss what I believe Nintendo's strategy will be with these classic games going forward. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As I mentioned, guys, today we are discussing the GameCube, the iconic classic library of games that it had to offer, and the likelihood of what Nintendo may be planning when it comes to some of these classic franchises, as so far when you look at things like Nintendo Switch Online, you have seen a lot of support around Nintendo adding in their retro consoles to the service to help justify a higher price point with things like the N64 addition to the expansion pack, and even going outside of Nintendo's own consoles supporting the Sega Genesis with that expansion pack. And some people have thought the logical progression would be for Nintendo to go ahead and not only add in the Game Boy family of systems, which make a lot of sense to see hit NSO, but maybe past that, we will see support for the GameCube. And while I do think that that is a strong possibility for the far distant future, I believe Nintendo sees a different picture when they look at the classic titles that they had during the GameCube era, as some of these titles are so beloved by fans and still honestly would look so great when just slightly remastered, that Nintendo could make significantly more money just bringing over some of these classics. And right on the top of our Metacritic user score top rated GameCube game list sits none other than Metroid Prime, which has also been in the rumor mill for quite some time for a remake, most notably coming from names like Emily Rogers, Jeff Grubb, multiple others claiming that yes, indeed, Metroid Prime remake is on the way. It was originally thought to be a trilogy HD remaster, but apparently somewhere along the way, the plans were shifted to be a standalone Metroid Prime 1 from the ground up remake, or at least newer textures, more enhanced controls, a big boy treatment, quote unquote, remaster project or remake project for Prime 1 is apparently what we should be expecting, and it should be in the works to be revealed soon, hopefully at that upcoming heavily rumored and likely to happen September Nintendo Direct. But I do think it is very notable that Metroid Prime is a fan favorite for a reason at a 97 user score on Metacritic, and truly to me, I believe it more than deserves that score. This is a game that when you look at the level exploration, the boss fights, and everything it has to offer as a whole, it is one of the best action shooter, adventure based sci-fi style games, whatever you want to call it. It's truly fantastic, and it's one of the titles that I grew up playing on the GameCube, and it really solidified me as a hardcore Metroid fan, and I got into more of the deep lore of the story and what the 2D games had to offer right after I got super into Metroid Prime on the GameCube. So this is truly the one for me that made me a hardcore loyal fan of the franchise, and one that I hope we see make it over soon. Now, continuing down our list, we do have games like Resident Evil 4, as well as Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess HD. And while Resident Evil 4 is already confirmed to be getting a remaster, that of course is not done by Nintendo, and unfortunately at this point in time will only be coming to systems like the PS5, Xbox Series X and S. However, Nintendo, on the other hand, is responsible for both The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, each sitting at a 96. And while I don't think there's any chance we get this collector's edition brought over as something like a remaster edition, these two games are definitely ones that I think we can safely expect to come to the Switch at some point in time. Will it happen at this year's September Nintendo Direct with all of the rumors around it? I am hopeful. However, like you guys, if you were around and following Nintendo news during the Zelda's 35th anniversary year, you probably thought we were getting them then, and that did not happen. So I don't have my hopes as high as they once were, but I am still hoping that maybe Nintendo surprises us Zelda fans and does deliver these games out this year, while we are waiting for Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 to ultimately be ready for sale next spring. And whether that be early spring or late spring, these are the type of games that, because they are such iconic titles, fans will buy these, whether they do a combo pack, which is what I'm hoping, or even if they sell them individually. These games will sell better than Skyward Sword HD, even though that game took significantly more work to port over to the Nintendo Switch because of things like motion controls being the only option for that game's original release. Both the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess hold an extremely special place in many Zelda fans' hearts, and I am one of them. I will replay both of these happily. I will pay, unfortunately, whatever Nintendo charges, even if it is $60 a piece, but these are two timeless classic 3D Zeldas that have to make it over, and I think instead of Nintendo doing things like putting them on Nintendo Switch Online and their vanilla versions like we saw for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on the N64, that these will indeed get their superior HD remasters that were already done on the Wii U, and I believe the only question is when will we see those games finally make it over? Not a question of if, but when. So as we continue down our list here, the point of the video to keep in mind, games like Beautiful Joe. Where is Beautiful Joe at, by the way? Can we get him a full-on return in 2022 or 2023? You kind of see some of the quality standouts, some of these being highly rated sports games, but you notice the first-party Nintendo ones. If Melee comes over, I believe that comes over absolutely as GameCube Switch Online and not some kind of remaster project, because while Melee is a fan favorite and one of my favorite Smash games of all time, second only to probably Smash Ultimate at this point, it does not need a standalone remake, but rather just the ability to play that classic game on something like a service that Nintendo can eventually sell us. But I do think Nintendo absolutely sees money with re-releasing some of these GameCube games and just slightly touching them up to sell additional Switch titles, as opposed to having something like the NSO full library just immediately available for the service. I think they're going to go a lot longer with N64 and Game Boy Advance system style games before we see things like the GameCube. Mario Party Sunshine, we already have that playable on the Switch, fortunately, due to the 35th 3D Mario All-Stars collection. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, whether or not we see that get released on the Switch or not, will be an interesting one, because if Prime 1 is a standalone remake, you would assume they're going to have to give us Prime 2 and 3 both. But how do they do that? Because at this point, it's really anybody's guess. If one of them is getting the big treatment, do they go through and give slowly the big treatment to Prime 2 and 3, or are they released as eShop titles? Or maybe, and I hope they don't do that because I'm a physical collector and I want them. I mean, what do they do in terms of these other two games? Do they package them together and just slightly up-res them, and that's how we get these titles? Like, we will have to wait and see for all of that, but very hopeful that Prime 1 is at least in the works sometime soon. We also had numerous collector edition type deals that Nintendo's been doing for quite some time. One thing that Nintendo knows how to do is resell their games, such as the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and Master Quest, available on the GameCube, which I own and thoroughly enjoy going and booting up from time to time, even though it's not the easiest way to play now with all of the other options we have to play Ocarina of Time. It is still a nice piece to have in the collection, and Nintendo's been doing this re-release strategy for a while with major games that they know will resell, and these are really the same versions of Ocarina of Time, just looking better with better resolutions and things, and making that Master Quest playable, of course. Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Squadron 2, that like 90 on Metacritic. You see some of the quality that you have here in this GameCube library of games. Pikmin 2 also sitting at a 90, Pikmin the original at 89, F-Zero GX, another one that is heavily talked about in the rumor mill and expected to come over soon. Definitely a safe title that I do think can come to Switch very easily, and I think games like F-Zero have a spot and a fan base on the Switch that is large enough, now that we are past that 100+ million units sold, that a game like F-Zero, even though it's more of a niche racing game that never got near the level that Mario Kart hit, it is still something that offers a very different experience and a very fast and engaging one, and I think fans that give it a chance, whether you're returning or for the first time, will really enjoy a game like F-Zero GX on the Nintendo Switch. Now, keep in mind, all of these scores that we're talking about here are user reviewed, so Nintendo may view these games very differently than how the users did. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, another one, 87. Surprised that's not higher up the list. That is one that Nintendo could easily remaster and resell for full price, and people would happily pay it, in my opinion. Mario Kart Double Dash, even though I don't know if Nintendo will ever return to this mechanic, it is definitely one that I want to see them do in the future, in a future Mario Kart game, or give us a Mario Kart Double Dash remaster, because something about that mechanic when it comes to playing Mario Kart with your two different characters, they each offer unique items. It was strategic, it was fun, it had a different element of gameplay than what we've had in any other Mario Kart, and so I definitely hope that we do see the return of games like that, whether it be remasters, directly to the console or something that comes over in the form of Nintendo Switch Online. I am here for the GameCube library games in a big way in the modern day, because I do think there's probably a lot of Nintendo fans that are either newer to Nintendo consoles with the Switch, or maybe you're like me and you grew up with so much fond nostalgia for the GameCube library that you are willing to shell out your own money again for some of the classic games that you may or may not still own, and you want to have them playable, whether that's on the go or docked. I mean, there is a lot of possibilities for where Nintendo could head from here, but if I'm a betting man, we have a while to wait until we see GameCube hit Nintendo Switch Online, and rather, for the next year or two, we may be indeed seeing a number of different GameCube titles ultimately remastered for the Switch. So I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, all your personal thoughts and opinions on everything we talked about today. How do you feel about all of the rumors of various GameCube remasters being headed to the Nintendo Switch? Do you think there's a shot of Wind Waker Twilight Princess HD being unveiled at the next Nintendo Direct? Do you think games like F-Zero GX will actually make it over, amongst many others that we are hearing rumors about? Do you think Metroid Prime is going to be at this Direct? I want to hear from you on everything we talked about in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, where we take a look at the changing landscape of games with mergers and acquisitions in 2022 and beyond, and discuss how, if at all, it affects Nintendo directly. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.